I knew everything had changed when James returned to Singapore. Once, he had been my Lola's fiancé. He had broken up with her a year before I met her. I knew that Lola's ex had broken her heart when he decided to leave her and marry a wealthy woman 8 years his senior. I started dating Lola after that. She didn't look like a cover model, but she was a very sweet girl. I loved her silky golden hair, her tender gaze. Those qualities captivated me. And about a year later, we got married. 2 years later, we had a wonderful boy, Harry. We loved him dearly. For 15 out of 16 years, we were happy together. Our life together was remarkable. Any arguments quickly dissipated, and we always found a compromise. Lola didn't enjoy doing housework because her parents, who often spoiled her, had indulged her as the only girl in the family. Over time, Lola learned to help me because we had Harry, and we were both loving parents. In our private life, everything was perfect. We made love no less than twice a week. I was happy and felt Lola's love for me. But in the last 6 months, everything began to change. I started to feel her drifting away from me. We still made love often. I still loved Lola, but it was different now. The fire, the passion we had when we first got married, was gone. We were perfect for each other, but it was as if we had become too comfortable, too accustomed to one another. Still, I loved her deeply, my Lola. I loved our life together, our beloved son Harry, and everything we had built. When our son started middle school, Lola's behavior seemed to change even faster. She seemed like she was losing control, on the verge of breaking down. Our son was soon going away for sports training with his team. I was expecting a promotion in the real estate sales department. The more successes my son and I achieved, the more nervous and distracted Lola became. Lola worked as a beautician at a local beauty salon. A couple of weeks after Harry left for college, we received an invitation to a party hosted by our mutual friends, Ted and Anna Johnson. James, Lola's ex, was invited too. I had no idea he would show up, but Lola knew. I immediately sensed her pulling away from me. It was becoming familiar. She disappeared into the crowd of guests. After about half an hour, I went looking for her. She was with James. They were standing together on the terrace, having an animated conversation. When I approached, Lola blushed and lowered her gaze. It was as if she had something on her mind she wanted to hide from me. She hurriedly introduced me to James. I didn't like him right away. There was something off-putting about him. Lola said they were just reminiscing about old times, but I had a bad feeling. Her cheeks flushed as she said it, but I decided not to make too much of it. And yet, I didn't like him. After that party, I started asking my colleagues about James. His wife had recently passed away. He led a quiet, uneventful life and wasn't involved in any scandals. A few weeks later, James and I crossed paths again. It wasn't a coincidence. I didn't like it. I immediately started preparing for the worst. I expected Lola to want to tell me something. But no matter how much I tried to convince myself I was ready, she still caught me off guard when she said it. We had just spent a fantastic night together. I was very satisfied. I even thought that my worries had been for nothing. It was clear that Lola still loved me as passionately as on our first night together. Then my wife, who had betrayed me, turned to me, slightly nervous, and said, "Matt, I need to talk to you. Please don't get angry. Listen to me until the end before saying anything." I tensed up. I didn't like where this was going. James was my first great love, she began. We were even planning to get married. But then he chose Alice over me. He left me for her. Alice's death devastated him. After all these years, he's completely broken. He told me he still loves me, and I need to tell you that I still love him too. At the same time, I love you very much. I stayed silent. I tried with all my strength to keep control of my emotions. Encouraged by my silence, Lola continued. She tried to smile. "I love you and want to remain your wife, but I also love James and want to be with him. I've talked to James about this. We decided that it would be fair if I spent one day with him and the next with you." The world around me disappeared. I got out of bed, dressed quickly, and left without saying a word. I drove to my office, a quiet place where I could be alone. I told my colleagues not to disturb me. I locked myself in for hours, replaying my wife's words in my head. How could she do this to me? Her voice echoed in my mind. Everything suddenly fell into place. She wanted to use me, but I wouldn't let that happen. She would have to choose. I came home later than usual. I was furious when I saw James's car parked outside our house. I took a deep breath. I had to stay calm at all costs. I entered the house. They were sitting together, clearly nervous as well. Lola quickly approached me to greet me, but one look from me made her recoil. She lowered her eyes, now filled with tears, but I didn't care. "We need to talk about this," she said nervously. "There's nothing to talk about," I said sharply. "It's either me or him. You don't get to have both." "You haven't even discussed it," James interjected cautiously. "I'm not trying to take your wife from you. I'm only offering her additional love. Yes, she needs it. I'm willing to share her. She'll fulfill all her wifely duties to you and your son." His words only enraged me further. I was seething. This scumbag had the audacity to tell me what I should do. He was saying that Lola should sleep with him because she lacked love and attention. I found them both repulsive. Only now did I realize that this was the end for us. Our marriage no longer existed. I glared at them and said, "I will never agree to this." "Listen," Lola began. "This is going to happen anyway. The only question is whether you're with me or not." I said, "No, get out, both of you." "Now," Lola covered her face with her hands and groaned. "All this time, I've been loyal to you. Please, do this for me. James was the first man I loved, but I don't want to lose you. You mean so much to me. I love you so much, but I also love James." I looked at James with a smirk. "If your wife came to you with such a proposal, would you accept it? Tell me, James." He smiled and nodded. "For my wife's happiness, I would do a lot." "Liar," I said irritably. I turned to Lola and said, "And what about you, darling? If I came home with my ex-girlfriend, how would you react?" She didn't answer immediately. "I wouldn't like it, but I'd accept it because I wouldn't want to lose you. I want the best for you. And you're lying too," I snapped, starting to lose control. "Prepare for divorce. Tomorrow, I'm filing the papers, and we'll divide everything." Lola's shoulders shook with sobs. I continued, "Don't expect alimony from me. From now on, you live with this scumbag." "Yes, with him?" "Nah, both of you. Get out of this house." James got up, walked over to Lola, and gently put his arm around her. I glared at him, but he ignored me. They walked to the door together. I silently watched them as they passed by me. Inside, I felt completely numb. When they left, and I was alone in this now empty house, its silence pressed heavily on me, but I stayed resolute. I had to keep myself together, like a man. I buried the pain deep within my soul. I went to my office. It was empty. I found the number of my friend, a lawyer. I knew he was reliable. He was the only person I could trust. His name was Leo Miller. He had extensive experience in divorce cases and had won many court battles. We got along well. He often invited me for a beer or a barbecue. The hardest part was telling my beloved son, Harry, about what had happened. It was very difficult for him to accept what his mother had done because he loved both of us deeply and believed that our family was forever. What he said afterward, "I will never forget that which stabbed you in the back, dead. I will never forgive her. After everything, you loved her so much. You were so kind to her, and she turned her back on you, on us. I don't want anything to do with that woman anymore." "Harry, listen to me," I replied. "You're angry right now. I understand, and I feel the same. But remember, she's still your mother. She loves you very much. There's no reason for you to fight with her over what she's done. No one will benefit from that. Let your emotions settle before you talk to her." "What if she calls me?" Harry asked. "Nothing will happen if she does. Just don't answer her right now. Wait a few days. Promise me that." "All right," Harry said, pressing his lips together. A few hours later, Lola called me. Her voice sounded anxious. "I can't get in touch with Harry. I'm worried." I patiently explained to her that I had already spoken to him. Harry was very angry with her. I said he needed time to calm down before revisiting the subject. "I won't let you turn my son against me, Meth. I only told him what you did." "Lola," I said calmly, secretly hoping it would sting. Harry didn't like that his mother suggested splitting herself between his dad and another man. I continued. She began. I cut her off. "You should hire a lawyer." I heard her start to cry. "Please don't. You're breaking my heart. I love you so much. Can't we work this out?" "No," I said and hung up. I had to take a few days off to prepare for court. Home felt lonely without her. I called Leo, but it turned out James had already spoken to him. It was a blow. The best divorce lawyer in Singapore was on their side. Listen, buddy, how could you? I asked Leo. Fine, if I can't turn to you as a lawyer, I'm asking you as a friend. Recommend someone as good as you. I just don't know what to do. But I never said he hired me. What a relief. I sighed. Buddy, I never abandon you, Leo said, and I'd never go against you. You can't imagine how grateful I am. Now, let's talk about the price. You didn't think I'd work for you for free, did you? He said. Does working? Don't worry about that. I'm ready to pay whatever it takes to prove I'm right. I replied, and besides, you're the best in the city. A few days later, Harry told me he had spoken to his mom. Judging by his account, he didn't like what she had to say. The conversation was clearly a disaster. There was a lot of yelling and arguing, mixed with accusations. Later, Lola called me. She begged me to talk to Harry, to ask for forgiveness on her behalf. I promised to handle it and speak to my son. More than a week passed, but I couldn't calm Harry down. He still hated his mom. He told her during the conversation that he wanted to forget her. He became withdrawn and even snapped at me. I didn't know what to do. Lola kept calling me day and night. Every conversation ended with her in tears. She begged me to come back and accept what she had initially proposed. But hearing that disgusted me. I stood my ground. This went on until the day of the divorce. After the divorce, she stopped calling. I had to start rebuilding my life and move on. I spent a lot of time at work, trying to lose myself in it. I asked my boss for more assignments. In the end, I managed to significantly improve the company's sales. It turned out many processes could be optimized, unnecessary expenses reduced, and the savings invested in better advertising. I received a monetary bonus and a promotion. 2 months later, Lola and James got married. They wanted my half of the apartment, but I didn't sell it. The thought of them living where Lola and I had loved each other for 15 years made me sick. James even threatened me, but I didn't care. I raised the price sky high. They still bought it. My anger was boundless, but the apartment was theirs now. Maybe it was for the best. I couldn't have lived there anymore, and I had a lot of cash left after selling my share. I also won the divorce case. Leo helped me a lot with that. He wasn't called the best specialist for nothing. I was very grateful to him. Everything went so smoothly that I was pleasantly surprised. I had purchased our property with money earned before the marriage, so I was entitled to a large share of the apartment. As a result, the amount I received from the sale was enough for a county apartment a few blocks from my office. My life was getting back on track, but deep inside, there was still a wound. The pain Lola had caused me. I buried it deep, but sometimes it surfaced. All those years with Lola, she decided I wasn't enough for her. I couldn't manage to start a new relationship. Most women were mature and had their own problems. Almost all of them wanted to get married right away, but I definitely wasn't ready for marriage again or for dealing with someone else's issues. I'd already been down that road. One evening, a few months after James and Lola got married, I was having dinner at a downtown restaurant. I didn't expect to see them there until Lola approached me. She sat her down on the empty chair across from me. I was surprised to see her again. I decided to be polite. I looked around. James was sitting at a table at the back, choosing dishes from the menu. "How are you, Matt?" Lola addressed me. "I'm fine," I replied quietly. "I still think about you every day," she said, placing her hand over mine. "I love you just as much as before. If you can ever accept my offer, I'll always be waiting for you." At first, I wanted to ask her to leave right away, but then I came up with an idea. I'll ask Harry. For me, this was a great chance to get back at her, to take revenge. And that James. "I miss you too, darling," I admitted, "but you're married to someone else now. There he is. He seems about to start looking for you." She glanced in his direction. He was watching her. She smiled at him and got up. "I love you. Remember that, Ted." After dinner, I called my son. He didn't like what I told him. I shared my conversation with Lola. I told him I couldn't handle it. Then I explained why I wanted to do it. He immediately approved. He laughed so hard. "Dad, that's the best thing you've ever told me." The next day, with my son's permission, I called Lola. I told her that I needed to talk to her and James. I said I had been thinking about her proposal all evening. Lola was very pleased. They invited me to their home, the place where we used to live together. I arrived for dinner. Lola met me at the door. James was sitting in my favorite chair, and it disgusted me to see that scene. He also grimaced slightly when he saw me. I immediately realized that Lola had just told him I was coming. He looked down on me, but I ignored it. Lola served us tea and Saturday next to me. I got straight to the point. Lola, tell me what you meant when you said you still wanted to be with both of us. Lola smiled broadly. Yes, Matt, I still want that. The offer still stands. I still love you very much, and I love James. Well, if you don't mind, I said, I'd be willing to agree. I'm not in a relationship right now. I can't give you some of my time. I'm so lonely these days. Oh, Matt. She wrapped her arms around me, and our lips met in a passionate kiss. I'm the happiest woman in the whole world right now. Wait a minute, James said, rising from that chair. I think you should have talked to me first. Darling, he said with a frown. You offered me the same thing, I said to him calmly. Yes, but, Lola, we should have discussed this together, he replied, clearly unhappy with the situation. We did discuss it, she said, surprised by his reaction. When did we discuss it? Before I mentioned it to Matt. You said you were willing to share. James was stunned and couldn't come up with a response, but he wasn't ready to give up so easily. I want to talk about this with you, Lola, he insisted. How-to-faced he was, this James. The situation was exactly like the one he once walked into this house with, but now things were different. He was her husband, and I was her ex. Still, I couldn't help but enjoy watching the drama unfold between them. I chose not to interface and watch from the sidelines. I'd be lying if I said I didn't find pleasure in it. Well, I'll be going. Lola, reach out to me later. I kissed her goodbye. As I walked out, I could no longer hold back. I laughed until my stomach hurt. I couldn't wait to tell Harry about the show. I was no longer the victim. Now, I had put him in my place, that scoundrel, James. Now it would suffer, not me. Lola called me 2 days later. She said how upset James was when she told him she was leaving. He had to agree. She was ready to spend a few days with me, and then a few days with him. James was miserable. I picked up Lola on Monday. How stunning she looked. James, on the other hand, was the complete opposite. His eyes were sunken, his hair disheveled. He had clearly let himself go. I pulled Lola into my arms and kissed her passionately. I packed her things, and we drove off. I did everything to make that night exceed all her expectations. First, there was dinner at a restaurant, the best dishes. She had to feel like the most special woman in the world. After dinner, we danced to live music. Then we went back to my apartment. She was incredibly happy every moment we were together. I miss you so much, Matt. I love you more than anything in the world. I spent the entire evening by her side, showing her all the care and love I could. In our special moment of intimacy, I held her gently and whispered, "You are so beautiful, the most wonderful being in the world." Every moment was tender, every touch filled with warmth and affection. In a way, we were reunited, our old connection reignited. "I want to be with you," she said. "It feels like you still love me." And though I had mixed feelings about Lola, I couldn't let this moment of closeness slip away. We were perfectly in sync. We were both happy in that instant. Right then, I let everything go. Nothing else mattered at that moment. We lay in each other's arms, and soon I fell asleep. I hadn't felt such inner peace in a long time. I woke up to her gentle touch as she ran her hand across my forehead. She looked at me tenderly with her enchanting eyes. We shared another beautiful moment together before I slowly kissed her. In that moment, I was ready to forget everything that had happened between us just for this morning. We were together again. I didn't feel guilty for being with his wife. For these few days, she was mine. Time passed easily and pleasantly. It was time to get back to work. I told Lola she could stay at my place during the day if she wanted. She tidied up the house while I brought groceries. She made dinner. It felt just like old times, I thought. Even Harry talked to her, though he hadn't forgiven her. He only spoke to her because I told him it was necessary for my plan. James was glad she returned. He couldn't wait to get rid of me. He could barely contain himself. When Lola approached him, he grabbed her by the waist and pulled her into a kiss right in front of me. I simply packed her goodbye and said, "See you later, love." Then I left. We stuck to this arrangement for 2 months. I felt like a winner. She was still with me even after the divorce. It was fantastic. We spent our nights together and our days as a trio with Harry. One day, on my way home, I witnessed a fight involving several drunk men. Among them was James. He didn't look good at all. I offered him my help. He had a black eye. I'll drive you home, but if you refuse, I'll have to call the police. He had no choice but to agree. We drove in silence. When we reached my old house, he cursed under his breath as he got out of my car. A few more months of our arrangement passed. Everything went as usual, though it was clear how much our ordeal irritated James. He wanted less and less to share Lola with me. They started arguing more often because of it. He did everything he could to end it. I didn't interface, just watch from the sidelines. Much to Lola's surprise, I kept telling her how special she was and enjoying the intimacy I shared with her. One day, when I came to pick her up for my scheduled time, the tension was intense. James and Lola were shouting at each other at the top of their lungs. They didn't even notice me pull up. I had to step in and calm them down. "You both need to cool off, or the neighbors will call the police," I said. "Go to hell," James snapped. He turned to her. "If you go with him, we're done." "We made an agreement, James," she replied with a firmness I had never heard from her before. There was no real love between them. "An agreement? What a load of crap," James shouted. "I'm telling you again, if you go with him, there's nothing left between us." "This is just ridiculous," she said venomously. "You were the first one to suggest the idea of sharing." James stormed into the house, slamming the door behind him. I looked at Lola questioningly. "He's just having a bad day," she said, taking my hand. "He'll cool off, and everything will be back to normal." Of course, nothing went back to normal. Things didn't improve between them. From what I could tell, James had moved out. Lola tried to contact him, but it didn't respond. Their life together was over. One Friday afternoon, Lola called me, crying. "He left me, Matt," she sobbed. "Can I move in with you?" "When our time comes," I replied with a smirk. "But James is gone," she said, clearly confused. "I want to be with you again, only you. I know I made a huge mistake." Everything James said about sharing was nonsense, just a way to tear us apart. "I want things to be like they used to be." "Listen, Lola," I said, pretending to be uncertain. "You wanted me to share you. You expected me to fully play the role of a part-time husband. You've gotten used to being a shared wife. I don't think James leaving changes anything. Do you still want me to pick you up the day after tomorrow?" She burst into loud sobs, then fell silent. For a moment, I thought she had hung up, but then I heard her crying again. This happened several times. I waited patiently. Finally, she whispered, "Yes, Matt, please, I'd really like you to pick me up the day after tomorrow." Thank you for listening to the end.